I would like to say that the ethos, the origin of ideology of the movement for independence of the Muslims of the subcontinent, led by the Muslim League under their Qaid Muhammad Ali Jinnah, that one can find the foundations of Pakistan-Indonesian friendship. What was one of the well springs of the Muslim League and the Qaid-e-Azam? One of that was that from the Pakistan resolution onwards, before the actual partition and independence of Pakistan, it was not only to organize the Muslims of the subcontinent, but to project to the rest of the world, particularly the Muslims and those under colonial rule, that Pakistan wanted their support, and also Pakistan pledged, with or without that support, when it came into being or while it was in the formation of coming into being, would give the utmost support for the freedom of these people under colonial and other oppression and occupation, not only, of course, in Kashmir, but throughout the rest of the world. And this was shown very much in later years in the Maghreb, when the national leaders of Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria were declared as terrorists by France. They were given Pakistani passports, diplomatic passports. They were taken to the United Nations Security Council, and to the surprise of the French and the Western countries, they were part of our delegation. They spoke for their independence there. Similarly, they were given panas, shelter in Pakistan. These leaders, many of them lived in Pakistan as such. Now, in the case of Indonesia, they had been under occupation of the Dutch for so long, then the Japanese, and then afterwards again the Dutch tried to reconquer these territories at the end of the Second World War. The Muslim League had made a point of telling the British that while we are sending soldiers to fight in the Second World War against the Japanese and the Germans, and in both theaters our soldiers fought very bravely, they will not be used against any Muslim country or any Muslim people. But nonetheless, after the Japanese did their formal surrender and the 7th Army moved into Indonesia to take over those responsibilities that it had, the Dutch had asked the British to help them retake Indonesia. There were in the British troops a number of Muslim troops also. But I want to tell you that our ties are laid in blood also, because some 700 of these Muslim troops, they left their posts, they left their pensions, they left their families. They became, for the British, they were deserters and subject to the death penalty. But they left and they joined their Muslim brothers in the Indonesian movement. They took with them their weapons, they took with them their communication equipment, they took with them their motor transport, whatever they had, and they joined not an organized at that time force, but bands of, as it were, guerrillas or fighters of the Indonesian resistance. And these people remained there throughout the War of Liberation. At the end, they fought very bravely, and at the end of which, only some 75 of them survived out of 700. And of these 75, although the government passed a law later on that they would be entitled to their pensions and all their privileges as if they had remained in the Indian and Pakistan Army all their lives and services, but most of them remained in Indonesia. They married, they settled down mainly around Bandung, and their families and their descendants still live there, and they're always very happy when Pakistani diplomats go there and recreate that sense of solidarity and friendship. And there were many engagements that they fought on, but one of them was that while the Japanese had surrendered, nonetheless, they had troops there. And at one stage, some of them saw the great leader Sukarno and they were going to arrest him, but the Muslims who were there, troops, they intervened and stopped that and wouldn't let them take him away, which he was always very appreciated very much. Then that is on the level of the people to people, army to army, liberation fighters to liberation fighters support. But then on the level of the leadership, there was a close friendship between the great leaders Sukarno and Muhammad Ali Jinnah or Quaid-e-Azam. There was an exhibition last year by the Indonesian embassy and others out here, including Mushahid Hussain, the institute, because his father was our first defense attaché there. They showed an exhibition of paintings and photographs and letters between the leaders. I would just like to refer to one. The Muslim League, of course, had asked for the liberation of Indonesia and the withdrawal of British troops, and where he thanked Quaid-e-Azam, and he said in a very affectionate manner, truly from the heart, he said, "Dear Mr. Jinnah, I was worried to hear that you were not in good health. I pray that you recover into good health for the sake of your people and for the sake of the Muslim Ummah." That was the kind of love and brotherhood that was between the leaders, and that was reflected between the people of our two countries. That lasted afterwards, and sadly, the founder of our country died. But President Sukarno visited Pakistan a number of times, and our presidents visited there also. And relations were quite close, and they remain more or less close. There have been little bits of ups and downs in the sense that they've been less close or more close. It was not that they were ever bad. And in 65, as is well known, President Sukarno in Indonesia, they offered submarines to guard Karachi harbor. They offered planes to come to Pakistan, jet fighter planes, which were shipped on ships. But the war was not that many days, and they had not yet reached Pakistan. But it shows a level of support and affection. And in 2000, and when the first Bandung conference took place, and there were 5 conveners, and one of them was Pakistan. I was very happy when I went to the Afro-Asian Friendship Conference in 2003 and 4 in Jakarta, that the Indonesian government had taken all the speeches of all the leaders of all the countries, including the Prime Minister of Pakistan, had published them in 2 volumes. It was a great historical feat, and I hope they digitalize it and make it more readily available. And I remember in their speech from Pakistan, because I dealt with the UN for many years, that the Prime Minister of Pakistan said, "We would like," this is 1955, "we would like the expansion of the Security Council, but only in the non-permanent category. No permanent, no new centers of privilege, no new permanent members." And that has been ours and the combined United for Consensus movement, including Indonesia, from that date onwards. But that in a way was the origin, the first public pronouncement of that on the international stage. So you see, there was a very good foundation laid, and it was continued also. But I would like to conclude my brief remarks by 2 observations. One is, and I think the ambassador or the Chargé d'Affaires of Indonesia will agree, that there is great potential between our two countries. That potential was there at the beginning, that was there in the first phases, that has been there in flashes in between. But to a large extent, there is a lot of that potential that still can be realized. There still has to be more people to people, not only Indonesian students coming here to be in our religious establishments and religious teaching, but in our universities, but in our technical courses, in our foreign level courses, but in tourism, etc. The trade is there. We have switched from Malaysia to Indonesia for palm oil, but we need to export more to Indonesia. There is a level of friendship, of cooperation, especially in trade, which is the driver of today's bilateral relations, and in people-to-people friendship, which a lot more can be done. And I think we should all dedicate ourselves to that objective, to realizing, exploring that potential, analyzing it, and trying as best as we can to include that. I would also finally end by saying that for the future generations and the present generations, more has to be written about the Indonesian-Pakistan friendship and how it began, how our ties in blood and between our leaders were there. And for instance, one of my colleagues, Ambassador Sanullah, Mia Sanullah, has written a whole book on it, his Indonesian saga, which has dealt with this. But unfortunately, it is out of print, and he should, even now I implore him, to digitalize it so it is available to everybody free of charge. And our embassies in both countries should have articles published reminding the new generation of what has been done. And we should, between our think tanks, including the Muslim think tank and Indonesian think tanks, and between the honored guests here, we should encourage more scholarly writings on the foundation of this friendship so that it can be built upon. I think that is very important to give that kind of infrastructure. So I think with these concise remarks, I won't take up any more of your time, but I hope I've laid the foundation for the beginning of our talks. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank all the other speakers, and I go.